The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
Welcome to the program, as it is Caleb Calhoun, and it is me, Dave Hooker. We'll be joined by Jimmy Hyams very shortly. His appearance brought to you by Varner Ford. Also a big show on tap today, as we are going to discuss the College World Series. Florida State, Caleb Calhoun, and the opportunity for Tennessee to do something that they've never done before. Hit that like button. Hit subscribe if you think Tennessee is going to win it all. We went on the record with John Adams yesterday and said we like Tennessee to win the championship. Caleb does as well. And Caleb, I think this is an important game for Tennessee, because they could face Arnold, the ace for Florida State, tomorrow. If they lose for Tennessee, that's when it gets scary. We'll visit with Jimmy in a little bit, but this is super incredible for Tennessee. And being in Knoxville now, the tenor of the town is different. You see more orange. It's almost like a football week, to be honest with you. It's strange. Hit the like and subscribe button. Caleb Calhoun, how are you, sir?
I am good, Dave. How are you?
You're never better. Your thoughts on the Vols as they move forward? I want to bring Jimmy Hyams in here as well. But what do you think about Tennessee's chances against Florida State today?
Oh, I think they have a great chance. I want to bring up some stats in our first topic to say that I don't think they should worry about facing any aces either. Tennessee all year has lit up other teams' aces. And I'll just put that out there. You talk about a lot of orange in Knoxville. I want to add to that. Guys, we check a lot of trends. Tennessee football is the most trending Tennessee-related topic year-round if you look at keywords on Google. The only exception is the NCAA tournament, when Tennessee basketball outtrends Tennessee football. Tennessee baseball is outtrending Tennessee football on Google right now. Checked it yesterday. That has never happened in the history of Google algorithms. Tennessee baseball has never outtrended Tennessee football on Google Trends.
Well, I know Jimmy Hyams is a big fan of Google algorithms, so I bring him in now. That is pretty cool, because the Google searches basically tell us what the United States of America wants at that particular time. Jimmy's brought to you by Varner Ford. Jimmy, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, and I do not use words that I cannot spell.
I don't know that I can spell algorithm either.
I thought Jimmy was saying Tennessee or football. No, I'm joking, Jimmy.
Hey now,
Jimmy, your thoughts on Tennessee baseball being this big? You and I have worked together. We've been around the program for 60 combined years in some sense, if not more. I never would have absolutely dreamed that Tennessee baseball would be this. You?
No. And probably at their zenith was the Todd Helton years, like 94, somewhere in that range, when he was the Golden Spikes Winners of Player of the Year. Great hitter, great pitcher. He could start. He could come off the bullpen. He and several other local players brought the popularity of baseball to new levels, I thought. And to see where it is now, it's unbelievable. To see the number of people that go to games, to see how much they're willing to pay to go to games, just to be in the standing room only section. I never thought I would see it get to this level. They're packing it. They packed it at over 6,300 or so. They're expanding the stadium again. There's tremendous interest. I went and played a tennis match over the weekend, and all I could hear was, "Hey, what do you think about that baseball team?" That's all they were talking about. So no, I did not think that it would reach the popularity that it has so far.
Been incredible, Caleb.
Yeah, no, it's very, very incredible. It's even when Tennessee, there were a couple of times in the Rod Delmonico years they went to the College World Series, 2001 and 2005. You guys were around during that time, but to my knowledge, Tennessee baseball, even with those College World Series teams, did not have this type of fan support the way they have right now.
No,
Jimmy,
no,
and I also thought those 90s teams had good fan support, partly because there were so many local players. If you would have asked me 10 years ago, before Tony Vitello was hired, I would have said Tennessee needs local players to fill the stands because baseball is never going to be big. Well, I would have been stupid. They don't need any gimmicks. They're just that good.
They are, and they've been good over a period of time. And people love Tony Vitello. He's about as popular as any coach that's not coaching football at Tennessee. The folks love him. They want to support him. They do support him. He has earned it because of the success he's had on the field. He's been a relentless recruiter. He's got a great eye for talent, some of the folks they brought in. And here's the other part of that, too, is the player development. I mean, if you look at where Blake Burke and Christian Moore were 3 or 4 years ago, they're at a completely different level. And that's been, and then Frank Anderson may be the best pitching coach in the country. So when you add all that together, you got success. And what's that old saying? The chicks love the long ball. Well, they're hitting that long ball. They got about 179 or whatever it is. Caleb can help me with that, but they got a bunch of home runs. And there's an algorithm that will tell me how many.
I mean, guys, my introduction to baseball was being a Mariners fan because I was a big Ken Griffey Jr. fan in the 90s. And they remind me of that Mariners lineup. I don't know if you guys remember that Mariners lineup with Griffey and A-Rod and Edgar Martinez and Jay Buhner. It was a home run every other pitch, it felt like, during that time.
Well, baseball lost one of its greatest, which ties us into today's tough question. I want to get to that right now.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Lost one of the greats that Jimmy could speak to better than me. He's got a couple years on me, and that's Willie Mays passed away. How great was Willie Mays, Jimmy Hyams? And then we're going to discuss, he had the over-the-shoulder incredible catch, some of the all-time great plays in Tennessee history. What was their say, hey, Willie Mays moment? But just how fantastic was Willie Mays, Jim?
He was, in my opinion, the greatest baseball player of my era of watching baseball. I started watching baseball in the early 1960s. I love Willie Mays. He was my favorite player. He could hit for average, hit for power, great defensive player, great arm. He also was a great base runner and base stealer. And the catch he made against Vic Wirtz is one of the greatest defensive plays ever, even though Mays at some point after his career said, hey, I made 10 catches better than that. But he was just a phenomenal player, had a lot of charisma about him. He was exciting to watch. And what I did not realize, and I should have, but I didn't realize, he missed about 266 games when he was called into service during the Korean War. And if he had not missed those games, I feel confident he would have passed Babe Ruth as the all-time home runs leader. He finished 54 home runs behind Babe Ruth. And if you give him 266 games, I'm convinced he would have surpassed him. So he was a fabulous player. And to me, the greatest I've seen. Hank Aaron, of course, is right there. But he was not as flamboyant as Willie Mays.
We certainly send our thoughts and prayers to the Mays family. Jimmy, as far as a Willie Mays play, that type of play, what stands out to you as far as a play that you've seen, that you've covered in Tennessee sports history, that you say to yourself, that was that type of incredibly athletic play at a clutch moment? Any that stand out to you?
Well, the Hunter Ensley's catch the other night when it looked to me like he left some eye black on that wall. I've heard others say it was part of the uniform, but I don't know if a uniform smears like that.
No,
that was a phenomenal catch, right? At a key moment that Tennessee needed. And he talked about how Drew Beam was pitching such a good game. He said, I was not going to allow that hit to occur because I wanted to help Drew Beam out. But I thought that's one of the better defensive plays I've seen in a clutch moment for Tennessee. The stage for college baseball doesn't get any bigger than Omaha. And to make that play in that situation would rank among the best defensive plays I've seen at Tennessee.
Pretty good one, Caleb.
That's hot.
What do you got? Greatest Tennessee play that you recall?
Well, I want to go back to Jimmy first because, Jimmy, the way I wanted to structure this topic was what is the Willie Mays catch moment for Tennessee football history? Of something you covered. What is the Willie Mays catch moment for Tennessee football history in your mind?
And Jimmy
Juwan Jennings against Georgia, Hail Mary.
Juwan Jennings?
Against Georgia, the Hail Mary catch to win the game against Georgia in what, 2016?
16. The high moment of Butch Jones's career right there.
Yeah. And that went downhill after that, didn't it?
Like really fast. I mean, like literally really fast. It completely went downhill.
Like somebody jumping off a 10-meter platform dive.
Triple Lindy from old school with Rodney Dangerfield is about what it was. Jimmy, I'm going to go with Deion Grant's one-handed interception against Florida in 1998 because it ended up in a championship.
Yeah. And
it was a catch as well.
It was. I had the privilege several weeks ago of playing in Philip Fulmer's tournament, and I was paired with Fred White, Jamal Lewis, and Deion Grant. Now, what's wrong with that picture? Okay. Who's the outlier? Which of those four probably is the weakest? You get two guesses.
I don't know. I've seen you hit the ball pretty good.
I talked to Deion Grant about that catch, and he got beat on the play. And he had to retrieve and go back and make that leaping one-handed catch. It was a brilliant play on his part. And, I would put that up there because if he doesn't make that play, Florida's going to probably win that game, right?
Oh, that's a touchdown.
And then your 98 season looks a lot different, doesn't it?
I mean, it was literally one of those plays, guys. Why it stands out to me is that it stood out to me because it was almost in slow motion. And you thought to yourself, Jimmy, he has absolutely gotten beat. This is a touchdown for Florida. Then in the course of the ball traveling through the air, I'm thinking he might get there. No, he's not going to get there. He might get there. And then he got there. It was almost like slow motion. And that's how the Willie Mays catch was. It's just reminiscent to me.
Yeah, and it's an iconic play for Tennessee. And Grant was such a great athlete. Tennessee, in the years I've covered them, they have not had many defensive backs as good as Deion Grant. He and Eric Berry and Dale Carter kind of stand out to me as among the all-time great defensive backs Tennessee's had in the last 40 years. But that particular play that Grant made, people talk more about Billy Ratliff in Arkansas and Clint Sterner, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you take out that Grant play against Florida, again, the whole 98 season and national championship season probably doesn't happen.
Very true. All right, Caleb, let me go to you. And I'm going to do it in my Deion Grant fashion. I mean this with respect because I love Deion. Almost definitely and whatnot. Who do you think will be? What is your play? What stands out the most? Because I know Deion likes to start his sentences and end his sentences with almost definitely and whatnot.
Well, as an aside, Deion Grant almost would have outdone himself because he came away with an interception in 99 that should have set up a game-winning drive for Tennessee at Florida, but the offense was complete, two toss plays to Jamal Lewis on 3rd and 3 and 4th and 3, and some of the most questionable play calling cost Tennessee in that. But mine is actually going to be the one that I think is just it's a famous picture all over Knoxville. It's the T. Martin 79-yard touchdown pass to Peerless Price to me. I know it's not like an amazing, like, oh my God, this play, if it doesn't happen, Tennessee doesn't win the national title. I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, it's possible, but I just think that's kind of the watershed moment of the game. And I know it was a standard play, but you guys probably were there and remember. How much did we hear about Florida State's speed on the outside and how they were just unbeatable? Mm-hmm. Their defense was a brick wall, and you just weren't going to beat them on the outside. And Peerless Price burned 2 defenders with that, caught the ball, and T. Martin put it in a perfect spot. And I know it's a basic just bomb for a touchdown, but it stands out to me the most.
Well, and Caleb, that season, I'm not sure at that moment that Peerless Price didn't have more big catches than any Tennessee receiver in a long, long time. And I'm not going to say he's the best receiver they ever had, but he caught a lot of long balls. He caught a lot of passes that help win games or turn games around. I thought the T. Martin to Peerless Price connection was terrific that year. I'll go one more in that Florida State game, the national championship game. Dwayne Goodrich's pick 6. I thought that was a huge play for Tennessee in that game as well.
I actually thought that, Caleb, was a bigger play than the Peerless catch. And as far as making those sorts of plays, we're talking about clutch players. Jimmy, lastly, I'll leave you this. Who are some of the clutch players you're looking forward to today when the Vols take on Florida State? Then we're going to switch back to football, if you don't mind.
Kind of hard to not put Christian Moore into that group. He hit for the cycle. Only the second player in the College World Series to do that. He did it on Friday night against Florida State. You got to give Blake Burke credit. He hit that 2-run single. And how about Kavaris Tears? Not only did he homer against Florida State, he hit the 3-run home run against North Carolina to give Tennessee a 3-0 lead. It ended up proving to be the game-winning hit in that game because Tennessee won it 6-1. And those are just 3. But if you look at that lineup, and we've talked about this before, every starter in that lineup's got double digits in home runs. Now, a couple of them don't have a real good batting average, but they have some pop in their bat. And so but those 3 I would pick. Well, and I can't leave out Dylan Dreiling. He had 4 hits against Florida State. He had the game-winning hit, walk-off hit against them. They just have something. That's what makes Tennessee so darn good. They've got so many different people that can get it done. And if I went to the pitching staff, I think what Kirby Cannell has done this year has been pretty special. He didn't have a pretty good out against Florida State, but for the most part this year, you could count on him to get the key outs late in a game.
Yep, agreed. All right, changing it up a bit. James Pierce, I think we would all agree, is Tennessee's most talented player on defense. Jimmy, any argument with that?
No.
Who needs to step up to help James Pierce? Discussing with some sources yesterday, Keenan Pili, I continue to hear that he is the leader of this defense, and he is viewed as that despite the fact that he's basically played 1 game. And I could argue he is actually a more important player than James Pierce. What's your contention on comparing those two and the impact they'll have this season?
It's hard for me not to go with Pierce just because I've seen it. I haven't seen it out of Pili. I also saw Pierce make a 52-yard pick 6 against Iowa. So he showed some versatility there. When I look at the guy that needs to step up, and Pili would be one, but when I look at a great edge rusher on one side, I think you need to have one on the other side because that guy's going to get a lot of opportunities. And I'm wondering if that guy might be Joshua Josephs as a pass rusher on the other side. There's another really good pass rusher that I don't think we talk enough about his ability. It's probably because he's a defensive tackle. But Omar Norman Lott had, I think, maybe 6 sacks last year. He is by far their best inside pass rusher. And if you can get the pressure up the middle and force the quarterback to scramble one way or the other, I think that's also very important. He's a better pass rusher than Omari Thomas, although Thomas, I would consider him probably the better overall defensive tackle. But what Lott does as a pass rusher, I also think is very important to this defense.
I would add to that, and Caleb, jump in here. Speaking to a source yesterday, look out for Jackson Moya. I think that he is going to be an impact player, the transfer in this fall. So I would include him in all of those names that Jimmy just mentioned. Caleb?
So, Jimmy, it's funny we bring this up because this was actually my big, I don't know if you remember about 11 years ago when Jadeveon Clowney tried to create a Heisman campaign for himself going into 2013. And the argument I always said was, even if a defensive end was ever going to win it, the problem with defensive ends is if you are that elite in a season, typically teams can totally neutralize you by running away from you at that point. So how much pressure is on, you mentioned Joshua Josephs, how much pressure is on all the other edge rushers for somebody to be able to step up on the other side, knowing that teams are going to be running away from James Pierce all year long?
And to add to that, Jimmy, would that have been Tyler Barron, right?
Could have been, yes. Yeah. Here's the other thing, too, to Caleb's point. Not only will you run away from Pierce, but you will also double team him in pass protection. You might have a tackle and a tight end blocking him. You might have a tackle and a running back chipping at him. So you got to have somebody on the other side that puts pressure on the quarterback. And maybe it's Josephs, and maybe it's Maui, the Stanford transfer, Maui. What's his name?
Moa. Yeah.
Moa.
Moa.
It's Moa. No,
Moa,
it's
my favorite player.
Moy, I believe.
Somebody really needs to come through on that other side. I don't think that it's Jackson Ross, the freshman, but somebody on the other side needs to be a good pass rusher, a productive pass rusher, so that when a quarterback drops back, he doesn't feel comfortable from either end. And so that's why I think it's really important that they develop somebody on the other side, which I think they will. I think they've got enough talented bodies to where they can find another pass rusher to complement from the other side for James Pierce.
15 seconds from Ray Varner Ford, who brings us Jimmy Hyams every Wednesday.
All-wheel drive, $31,954. 24 Ford Edge all-wheel drive, $37,975. 24 F-250 4x4 crew cab, $54,760. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
Same source I spoke to when we were discussing how it's summer and players can get in trouble this time of year, Jimmy, and how Tennessee hasn't had a lot of players get in trouble, but the one that did was James Pierce.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't just a traffic violation. It was a little more than that. When you don't give police officers respect and you don't follow their direction, that to me is a red flag. It might be a one-off. He might be fine the rest of his life, Jimmy, but how concerned do you think Tennessee should be that James Pierce could have an issue at some point?
I remember when Josh Heupel was asked about Pierce being the number one pick in the draft, according to some projections, he talked about, now he needs to understand he's got a lot more work to do. I think basically what he was saying is he needs to mature, and that's a part of it. I would think that with Rodney Garner pushing him and with them dangling the carrot, do you want to be a number one draft pick? Do you want to make a whole lot of money? Because if you do, you can't be a knucklehead. You can't get arrested. You can't have DUI or whatever. You've got to walk the straight and narrow, and maybe that catches his attention. So, but yeah, he's I think that maturity is a key word for him to make sure that he continues to work hard to stay out of trouble. It's a little bit of a concern, and look, I don't know all of his background, but I do know that incident raised a red flag with me a little bit. But it's not something that I don't think can be corrected, and not something that they can impart to him to say, look, you could be blowing your future over some silliness like this. So get your act together.
Agree with that, Caleb.
Yeah, I totally agree. And Jimmy, with defensive linemen, I mean, I feel like isn't there the balance of you gotta spark a mean streak out of them, but knowing they gotta be able to keep a level head when they're off the field? Is defensive line the toughest position to strike that balance on a football field?
Probably, because you're taught to be aggressive, right? As a defensive lineman, probably as much or more so than any other position. So you got to be able to flip the switch. You can be completely aggressive on the field, but you got to be careful off the field. Now, I have seen some offensive linemen that were pretty aggressive, Kate Mays, but I think you just have to be able to strike that balance of leaving it on the field and not carrying it off the field. And I think some players, I think that comes naturally to them. I mean, look at Reggie White. The guy was a minister off the field. So I do think that you can strike that balance. But to your point, you are taught to be aggressive as a defensive lineman. And so I just think that therein comes that maturity part. I don't know, Dave, if you had mentioned this to me a while back, but I read some article about the brain really doesn't mature until you're like 25 years old.
Well, that's what my son told me. That's his
excuse. I remember. Yeah, I think we had that conversation. So in some cases, that brain needs to mature when you're like 20 or 21, if you're a college football player.
Yeah, I think mine matured pretty late, in fact. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put on the poll question on YouTube. I'm going to change it up just a little bit, Jimmy. So I'm going to say, who is Tennessee's most important defender? Are you going to stick with Keenan Pili because you haven't seen him yet, or James Pierce because of his athletic ability and what you've seen?
I'm going to go with Pierce because I know he can dominate a game. And I'm also intrigued to see how often Tennessee's going to put him in pass coverage, because I think that pick six against Iowa probably upped his draft stock for them to see that athletic ability. So I'm going to go with him because I've seen it. I know what he can do. What did he have, 10 sacks last year? Now, Peely needs to come through. He needs to have a big year for Tennessee at that linebacker position. But I'm going to go with Pierce as the most important defensive player.
And what about you, Caleb?
It's James Pierce. I mean, he's the best defensive player in the country from a talent perspective.
You say it in such a condescending way, like I'm an ignoramus.
It's James Pierce. It's James Pierce. You were talking.
Oh, hey, what does Peyton think about it?
Like, guys, Jason, are we not talking about a guy, and from a talent perspective, that's like, in terms of transcendent talent, that's on the Eric Berry, John Henderson, Reggie White level? I mean, Al Wilson level? Are we not talking about that at Tennessee?
Okay. Now, this is going to be out there, but I'm going to say it. They think Keenan Pili can be that type of guy from a middle linebacker standpoint. Now, I'm not saying the outside linebacker like Lawrence Taylor that scares you with big plays. I'm just talking about they think he can be that type of middle linebacker guy, a special middle linebacker. Jimmy, am I being snowed over a little bit?
Well, his brain has matured.
Very true.
He's a smart guy. Yeah, and I do think he's very important. And he can be a difference maker for this defense. There's no question about it. I didn't think the linebacking core last year was all that good. I did see a linebacker with a lot of tackles, but a lot of those tackles were well beyond the line of scrimmage. I saw linebackers chasing people in pass coverage. I think Peely, if healthy, can upgrade the linebacking position to where it could be one of the most improved positions on the team from last year.
Peely will actually be 26. It's funny, I bumped into him on campus, and he had a briefcase, slacks, and a suit. I mean, he was all dressed up. So old. It's like he was going to work. No, it's like he checks into work every day, Jimmy. I mean, he's 26. I was 26 when I started working. Well, it'd be 26 in the summer. I was 26 when I started working for you.
Did you meet his grandson?
Oh my God. Line of the day.
But also, wait, are you guys honestly telling me that, okay, I get you're saying Keenan Pili is a very smart player. Are you telling me that he has the athletic ability to be that transcendent type of talent?
No. I think he's in the upper 5% of middle linebackers. I think James Pierce is in the upper 1% of all players.
In history.
Is that a fair way?
Yeah,
well,
in Tennessee history.
At least in this group. Is that a fair way to say it, Jimmy?
Yeah. And I understand what you're saying, but and kind of with Pierce, you know what you got. But I go back to my point about Peely is he can upgrade a position that, in my opinion, was not that good last year. That was pretty average. So if you can get a guy that plays at a very high level, not a James Pierce level, but at a very high level, at a position that I thought underachieved last year, that makes your whole defense a lot better.
I want to go to the message board. So Keenan Pili at 27 years old is the only player on the team that has a matured brain. No more people have a matured brain. If you're going to be good, it might be Pili. If you're going to be great, it has to be Pierce. That's a pretty good comment. Now, I'll ask both of you guys this question. One of those two guys gets hurt in the first game of the season, like happened with Pili last year. Which one hurts Tennessee's roster the most?
I'm going to say, and this sounds counter to what I've been talking about, I'm going to say it's Peely.
Yeah.
Because as great as I think Pierce is, and I do think he's a top 10 NFL draft pick, I think Tennessee has more depth at defensive line by far than any position on that football team. So I think there's a greater ability to overcome that with the stacked lineup you have. I mean, Rodney Garner's talking about he's got 10 or 11 guys on the defensive line that can play. How many linebackers can play at a high level? How many?
2.
So, and we got Aaron Carter, who I think is very athletic, but he hadn't proven it. You got Peely. I think there are concerns about if you lose a very good player at a position where I don't think you have much depth, I think his loss could have a greater negative impact on the linebacking core than Pierce would on the defensive line.
Did I win you over with that one, Caleb?
Close, but no, and I'll tell you why. Yes, depth matters. Wait, hold on. Let me just, and you guys both cover this team. Look, depth matters. Depth matters. I agree with Jimmy on that, and the linebacking core is deeper. So depth is important, but sometimes the talent is so rare it doesn't matter. I'm going to give you guys a great example. In 2001, there were 4 defensive tackles taken in the NFL draft on that roster. John Henderson, Albert Haynesworth, Abreu Franklin, and I believe it was Rashad Moore. All 4 were taken in the NFL draft. And Demetrian Veal, you could argue, was a tackle, although he played end. It didn't matter that they were that deep, though. If John Henderson goes down, that's still your biggest loss, right?
No.
Really? You didn't think John Henderson was that important?
No, okay. But here's where I'm going with that. Would Henderson be a huge loss? Absolutely. But what did you have at your linebacking core? You were really good at linebacker then also. So my point is, sometimes even though a player's not as good as another player, his importance at that position could be greater because you don't have depth. Who backs up Kenan Peely at linebacker? Who's it going to be?
I really didn't ask that question. I should have bad reporting skills.
Jeremiah T-Lander?
T-Lander. Okay, yeah, and I think it would be T-Lander. But you've got several defensive ends, not as good as Pierce, but several defensive ends that you can win with at an SEC level. Could you win with T-Lander at an SEC level? I don't know. That's a question mark. So my point is, even though Peely is not as good as Pierce, nobody's arguing that, I'm thinking because of the lack of depth at that position, his loss would be more impactful.
Okay, let me ask this question real quick then, just Dave, if I can do this, because all right, I'll play this
By the
game.
way, Jimmy, the guy that holds me so close to the clock is the one that's taking this topic to an extended duration. Go ahead, Caleb.
He's lacking.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yes, mostly. He calls this morning. Quincy had a rough night. Go ahead, Caleb.
He did. He had a really rough night. Okay, so let me throw this in here. Okay, so let's go back to 2001. They were not deep in the secondary that year. They had major issues in the secondary. So would you have rather lost John Henderson or Andre Lott in 2001?
Ooh.
I don't remember that secondary, so don't be going back 20-something years. I haven't slept very well either.
You're older than me, and I remember it.
That's why I can't remember it. If I were younger than you, I'd remember. I don't remember everybody in that 2000.
Sounds like a cop-out by Jimmy over here. I think I got him.
I don't know who was in the secondary then.
Willie Miles, Andre Lott, Julian Battle.
Mickey Allen back there?
No, I don't think Mickey Allen was back there. I think that was the 90s.
Yeah. You said 2001, right?
Yeah, 2001. Andre Lott, Willie Miles, Julian Battle, Rashad Baker, maybe.
Yeah, I think he would have been. He was a receiver that they moved to the secondary.
He was the player that Philip Fulmer came out and said it might be the most natural receiver that I've ever seen in my career, and the next day moved him to the corner. Sorry. The show represented by Banks and Jones. Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks and Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks and Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks and Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com.
19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, BanksJones.com.
He tries very hard. The Dave Hooker Show.
All I know is when we win a game, it's a team win. When we lose a game, it's a team loss.
A presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable!
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
With Jimmy Hyams, his appearance is always brought to you by Ray Varner Ford, right there in Clinton. Check them out. You will love Ray Varner Ford, treat you well, and you'll be proud to call Ray and that crew your friend. They are fantastic. Now, Jimmy, I'm curious. Preseason rankings, which do you place the most emphasis on, or any at all?
What do you mean? Which do I place the most emphasis on?
I mean, is it the AP? Is it the coaches?
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I got you.
Or even 247 or any of the various media outlets or Off the Hook Sports. any of those.
Phil Steele. I think he does the best job of rating it. And I will say this is self-promotion on his part, but when I go back and read his stuff, he talks about how many times top 10 teams that he projected to be in the top 10 were, how many top 25 teams were. I certainly don't think it's a coach's poll because they have an agenda and they're voting. And who knows if they're actually voting. I think the AP poll is a little bit more reliable, but I think Phil Steele does the best job. He has a bevy of information. He has offensive production, defensive production returning. He also incorporates the transfer portal production that you're gaining. I'm going to go Phil Steele is the most accurate.
I think he's pretty good. I do like Pro Football Focus a lot. And Caleb, Tennessee's ranked in the Pro Football Focus ranking. Where are they ranked? And let's discuss what that says about the Vols' talent level.
Yeah, so Tennessee came in at number 16 in this year's PFF Pro Football Focus Power Rankings, slightly behind Clemson and Ole Miss. Now, I personally have Tennessee up in the top 10, and I'm really high on them. I think there's a lot of things that can't be quantified, but I think 16 is very close to, Jimmy, where you have them, right? Because you think they're going about 9-3 this year, right? So,
correct.
I guess where I'm at is this, because you're right. I take ST plus FPI, Phil Steele. I think he does the best because he factors all of these. And then I do go with Pro Football Focus. Where I'm going with this is how hard is it to quantify Tennessee's talent this year because of the unknown of Nico? Because typically when you lose a quarterback, you say there's a drop off, but everybody in the world seems pretty certain that there's going to be an upgrade for Tennessee at quarterback this year. So how hard is it to quantify Tennessee relative to other teams this year?
I think it's hard because you lost a lot of players. Frankly, I was surprised, and I wrote a blog on this about how Josh Heupel said it's the deepest team he's had, and I don't think that. I see too many losses from last year's team. I think they're deeper in some areas than the 2022 team, but I think overall 2022 was deeper. Now, Caleb, I know one reason you're very high on Tennessee is that you think Nico is going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC, right?
Yes.
You think he's going to be terrific. I rate him about 6 or 7 in the SEC. I've got other proven quarterbacks that I've seen that I think are going to have really big years again. So that's why I've got them at 9-3. I do think Tennessee's hard to predict because I think they don't have very good depth on the offensive line. They've got to stay healthy there. You don't want Nico to take too many hits. I also still don't like their secondary. They lost, it seemed like 10 players in the secondary, some to the pros and about 7 or so to other colleges in the transfer portal. Those are 2 areas of concern that really bother me, the secondary and the offensive line. Now, if they can stay healthy on the offensive line, I think they'll be fine. But how many times do you stay healthy and start the same 5 every year? Not very often. So those concerns make it hard for me to predict Tennessee where they're going to go. Now, at 9-3, that puts them as a borderline playoff team. I think they're better than 16th, like Pro Football Focus.
Okay.
But at 9-3, I think they got a chance to get into the college football playoff. But that just depends on what other teams do.
Jimmy, if I told you that Tennessee, let's say Pro Football Focus is right, 16th best talent. Well, first of all, let me ask you, I know you don't know every program's roster from top to bottom, but do you think 16 just in terms of talent level, not what they'll do or where they'll finish, do you think that feels about right?
I think that's fair. I think there's a range. I think if you had said their talent level was between 12 and 16, I don't think there's a whole lot of difference in that. So I think at 16 is probably pretty fair.
Caleb, what do you think about that? I think number 16's about right.
I think in conglomerate talent, it's about right. I think when you factor in the importance of the quarterback and how valuable I think Nico's going to be, plus Josh Heupel's coaching and a system, I think that elevates them a significant bit. But it just, I mean, if we're just going on just numbers of NFL draft picks, numbers of players from teams we think will be productive in the NFL, yeah, Tennessee's probably number 16. I think that's about right.
Well, let me ask you this, Jimmy. If Tennessee is indeed number 16, is that a win for Josh Heupel to have the 16th most talented team heading into his fourth season, given what he took over?
Yes. Yeah, I think it is. I also think if you've got the 16th most talented team and you go 9-3 in the SEC, that's another win. Because this league is just, it's brutal. It's really, really difficult. And so there's some games on Tennessee's schedule that, I mean, there are two games that I don't think they're going to win. There are a couple of others that are going to be very difficult to win. So, yeah, I think if you go 9-3 based on the 16th most talented team in the country, that is a win for Heupel in Tennessee.
Jimmy's appearance again brought to you by our good friend Ray Varner Ford in Clinton.
Wheel drive, 31,954. 24 Ford Edge, all-wheel drive, 37,975. 24 F-250 4x4 crew cab, 54,760. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
Okay, I want to ask you guys both this. Is 16 good enough? Given that I think we all three think, and correct me if you don't believe this, that Josh Heupel is one of the better coaches in the SEC. So if that's the case, is 16th good enough, or do you have to eventually get to a Georgia, Bama top level of having elite talent? Jimmy?
I don't know that you have to have Alabama, Georgia talent, but you got to be nipping on their heels. And I don't think Tennessee's talent is at that level. Now, I know Alabama lost a lot, but they have recruited so well through the years that I still think they're the second most, well, Texas and Alabama would be the second most talented teams in the league to Georgia, in my opinion. And then Tennessee comes in somewhere in the mix right after that. So, but, and you're talking about win a national championship.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, you got to be better than 16th.
According to our poll question, and then I got that same question for you, Caleb. Tennessee's talent is blank, 1 to 10 in the nation, 53%, 11 to 15, 41%, 16 to 26%. Beyond 20 gets a big 0. That's not a stunner. Do you think coaching makes up for 15 spots, Caleb, or how many spots does it make up for in a talent gap?
With the PFF grades, I think coaching and quarterback makes up for 15 spots. Because remember, guys, what I'm saying, PFF is just taking everything evenly across the board with pro talent. So basically, they're weighting, like they are weighing your number 2 cornerback the same way they are your quarterback in terms of value to a team. And so that's just what they do. Because of that, I think, yes, 16 can be good enough because we've seen it before. Auburn did not have a top 40 talent team in 2010, but they had this guy named Cam Newton, and they had this offense that this guy named Gus Malzahn ran, and it didn't really matter that they were so behind on talent everywhere else. He could just put them on his back and carry them to a national title. And so I think that's what PFF can't quantify with their method is, again, if you're number 2 cornerback and your quarterback, they're both starters. They're both going to be weighed equally the same in PFF. Well, we know that's not how football really works. The quarterback is worth 50% of your team, pretty much. And so I think because of how good I think Nico is going to be, I think they can. And Jimmy, to your point, I get the SEC's loaded. I'm with you between Quinn Ewers, Jackson Dart, Carson Beck, Garrett Nussmeier, actually, who I think is underrated at LSU. And even Jackson Arnold could be good at Oklahoma. I'm with you on all that. But I'm telling you, Jimmy, please do not try to include Jalen Milroe ahead of Nico Iamaleava, because I see a lot of people doing that, and he is not a fit for Kalen DeBoer's offense, and I keep insisting that.
It's your request. I will not include Milroe in the Nico conversation. That's how much respect I have for you, Caleb.
Oh, thank you, Jimmy. I really appreciate that.
Stay tuned. More after this. Coming up, these two guys, they go at it. We're going to talk about a Lady Vol transfer and Urban Meyer's comments. It looks like he might be pining for the Buckeyes job yet again. Stay tuned. More after this. He's Jimmy Hyams, brought to you by Varner Ford. With Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. This is a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
Wheel drive, 31,954. 24 Ford Edge, all-wheel drive, 37,975. 24 F-250 4x4 Crew Cab, 54,760. Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co.? What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TriStarHatsCo.com. That's TriStarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TriStarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do, to save an additional 10% off. TriStarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys.
Excuse me, Your Honor.
Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, who is it?
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Get to the message more quickly before we get to our next discussion. It's brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler, looking for affordable game day jewelry. How about the Fire Opals? They're awesome. A Tennessee tradition, rickterryjewelry.com. And check it out in the background. You can see the Tennessee cufflinks just barely, but I know you can see the Power T necklace if you're on our video platform on YouTube. If you're on our audio platform, get on YouTube and hit the subscribe button and like and know that we'll have all kinds of great giveaways thanks to our good friend Rick Terry at Rick Terry Jewelry Design. All right, so what are your thoughts, Jimmy, on Urban Meyer?
On Urban Meyer saying that Ohio State has the best talent in the last decade, maybe ever?
Well, I was going to go big and then funnel down, but we can go ahead and jump right to it. What do you make of Urban Meyer saying that Ohio State has the best talent ever?
Hyperbole. I think he was after clicks. And at his age, he shouldn't be after clicks. How can you say that? Look, to me, Georgia and Alabama at various times over the last 15 years have had the most talent in college football. Ohio State's got very good talent, but I cannot put it over what Georgia has produced in more recent years, what Alabama had for much of Nick Saban's tenure. So, yeah, they've got really good players and really good talent, but I don't see them as being the most talented over the last decade, certainly not even close to the most ever.
No, it was bizarre. Caleb, do we want to play the clip? I see you pulled it up.
Yeah, it's a 13-second clip. We'll just play it real quick. So here's what he said.
But as of now, this is one of the most talented rosters in the last decade, maybe ever. I mean, that's a big statement. They got to play, but you look at the quality of athlete at every position, I've never seen anything like it.
Jimmy,
I do love the Avicii in the background. I got to give him rest in peace, Avicii. I do love that, but you know,
I don't know what that is. I guess that's music. Jimmy, is he pining for the Ohio State job?
I don't know. I think he's done.
I don't for some reason. I think that was a statement that he wants Ryan Day's job.
Well, maybe I can't say. Ryan Day's done a heck of a job there. Now, he's had trouble beating Michigan, but maybe that'll change when Harbaugh's not in the picture anymore. I thought it was a comment that puts a lot of pressure on Ohio State and on Day. But if you're Ohio State, would you go back to hiring him? I don't know. He's got a great record. What he did at Jacksonville in the NFL was abhorrent, just an awful job there. And, I don't know that he's pining to get the job back, but I certainly think he put a lot more pressure on Ryan Day and Ohio State to win a national championship.
Caleb, what did you make of the comments?
He's jockeying for the Ohio State job. And I'm going to tell you guys why. I'll tell you guys exactly why. This ain't the first time Urban Meyer's done this when analyzing a team. He did this last year. Down to Texas. It was about May of last year. Dave and I talked about it. Steve Sarkisian was 5-7 his first year, 8-5, and it was a very clear message that if he didn't deliver last year, that he might be on the hot seat. So what does Urban Meyer do? He goes out and he says Texas has the best team in the country. Now he does it with Ohio State, where Ryan Day is borderline on the hot seat. There are a lot of questions about him because he's just not delivering the way he should. Urban Meyer, year after year, is going to elite schools that have coaches that people are a little bit souring on, and he's saying they have the best team in the country, and I think it's the type of schools that he'd love to coach at, so he wants to try to get the coach there fired. Book it. He's going to do this with USC next year when people are unhappy with Lincoln Riley. Watch.
Jimmy, Caleb and I don't always agree, but I do agree with him on this one. And part of it is Ohio State bringing in Chip Kelly to be an offensive coordinator, which is a very strange move given his resume. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Yes, it is. And he does not run the offense that Ryan Day has typically run. It almost reminds me, and I'll be curious to see how much power he has. I wonder, is this going to be like Bobby Petrino at A&M, where Petrino didn't call the plays and Fisher just had him there in name and kind of shoved him to the side? Is that what's going to do with Chip Kelly? I think Ryan Day's going to look at Chip Kelly and say, okay, I hear what you're saying, but this is not going to work in our system. So I'll be curious to see where it goes. I thought it was a very odd hire.
Jimmy's appearance is always brought to you by Varner Ford. Also, portions of the program brought to you by Apex Apparel Group Design. Check out the new polo. Loving it. Loving the fact that it's cutter and buck. It's incredible. And listen, you can order a lot of these things online, but you start to do that. You start to do the running around. Just call Tyler at 865-919-3001 for your company and know that he'll take care of you, not just apparel, but all kinds of promotional items. 865-919-3001. 865-919-3001. Mention Off the Hook Sports. Get 15% off. That's 15% off. Jimmy, the thing that stood out to me, and again, apologies for those on the audio platform, is I thought Urban Meyer looked healthy for the first time in a while. And it makes me wonder if he puts so much pressure on himself when he's building a team that he kind of crumbles and then he builds himself back up on a personal level. Do you think he could coach again if he decided? Do you think he'd have an opportunity, a good opportunity?
It would be hard to turn him down based on his record. The guy won at Bowling Green in Utah. Now, of course, Utah is pretty good. Bowling Green's not as far as a program. Then he won 2 national championships at Florida, 1 national championship at Ohio State. Given his record, it's hard to turn him down. As a person, I think he's a mess. And I think if he gets back into it and he loses a game or two, it's going to be the same old stuff with him. Excuses, health, whatever. So, but if I'm at a program that I think can win at a high level, it's hard to say no to hiring him. I get that. So do I think he could get a chance at another high-profile job? Yes, I do.
Caleb, let me ask the meanest question to you known to man. Is Ohio State more likely to win a national championship in the next 3 years with Ryan Day or Urban Meyer if they made that type of transition?
I mean, I know a national championship is such a crapshoot. What, your job as a coach is to kind of get you at that level of Ryan Day does, but so I don't hold it against him for not winning a national championship. I think there's a lot of luck involved. But I'm going to say more with Urban Meyer because I do hold it against him for losing to Michigan 3 years in a row. And by the way, not just losing to Michigan, guys. Michigan blew them out 2 of those 3 times. And Ohio State had better talent all 3 years. So Michigan just beat them because they were better coached all the way around. So yeah, I think Urban Meyer would be more likely to win another national title with them. And I think that's why that's why this is all happening. Ohio State's boosters know what I know. I picked Ohio State to win it last year, Jimmy. You may not know that because I looked at one of my number one metrics for national championship teams is who's got the most projected first round picks the next year. And Ohio State was lapping the field going into last year on that, and they came up short. And I think the boosters see that. That's why they've opened the NIL checkbook. They brought in Chip Kelly. What they're saying is, it's put up or shut up and win it this year. And Urban Meyer knows that. And yeah, he does look healthy. I think Urban Meyer was always healthy. Urban Meyer is that kid that when you're playing one-on-one basketball with, the minute you start winning, he fakes an injury and walks away. And, he's like, oh man, my leg. Oh, I just can't play anymore, man. We're just going to have to call this game a draw.
Jimmy, again, Caleb and I don't always agree. But in this particular case, there might be some agreement there. I thought that he saw some guy named, I think it rhymed with Rick Rabin, and he saw him in Atlanta, and my goodness, I've got health issues all of a sudden. Holy Hannah, I got to see my doctor.
Yeah, I got to go watch my daughter play volleyball. Yeah, I'm going to differ with you a little bit. I think Ryan Day's got a better chance to win a national championship at Ohio State than does Urban Meyer. And there are 2 reasons why I think he's better positioned right now to do it. Nick Saban is retired and Harbaugh's in the NFL. Those are 2 reasons I think Day's got a better chance to win it all.
That's a pretty good point.
Best talent we've seen in 40 years in college football.
And the best assemblage of human beings in the history of human beings.
But wait,
83 first-round draft picks on that team.
You're saying Ryan Day has a chance because Harbaugh's gone. Well, Harbaugh only got the chance because Urban Meyer was gone.
Right.
I mean,
and how did that work out? Harbaugh won a national championship. You played right into my hands, Caleb.
I think I have this question. If Urban Meyer could get the Ohio State job, but he had to kick a puppy really hard, would he do it?
Yeah.
There's no question.
He would drown it in a heartbeat.
Just a puppy.
Don't see. He'd
be like, "Where is Aaron Hernandez when I need him?"
Right. From the message board, I'm moving on. Or Mike Vick. From the message board, we had a question. Who could be Tennessee's surprise player? One that we haven't talked about much. I think I've already shared mine, which would be Jackson Moya. Jimmy, is there any out there that you think is kind of flying under the radar at this point?
Gosh.
I feel like we've discussed about everybody.
I'm going to go with the guy that I was really impressed with in the spring, and that's Brazil, the wide receiver, the transfer from Tulane. Caught 44 passes. He's got elite speed. I think that Nico is a much more accurate passer than Joe Milton. Therefore, I think he'll be in position to catch a lot of balls. And I also think that Tennessee's receiver yak yards will be much higher because I think Nico hit people in stride much better than Joe Milton did. I'm going to go with Brazil at wide receiver.
Okay. Moya, Brazil. What about Brazil? Caleb, you?
Brazil.
So I separate Vols who should break out versus dark horse Vols. But in terms of dark horse Vols, which we're getting at, which I want to do a whole list on that later in the year. I just want to put that out there now. I think I'm going to say, wow, that's tough. I'm going to say Peyton Lewis, the freshman. I think he's going to step in at running back and immediately be the starter in the fall.
Would be pretty.
It's interesting you mentioned him because my other guy was Cam Seldon. I thought about him.
Jimmy, Cam Seldon has worse vision than Trent Richardson.
And how did Trent Richardson do in college?
It's true.
Trent Richardson ran behind a massive offensive line that Tennessee doesn't have.
Okay.
We three could have run for 1,000 yards.
Elias says Ricky Gibson. Jimmy, I'm kind of the, I'm going to let you out of here after this. Jimmy, I'm kind of the mindset, I don't know, known commodity, but to me, he's pretty close based off what I've heard. They think he's going to be the starter. I don't know if he's going to be any good, but he's going to be the guy.
If he ends up being a really good corner, that helps the defense immensely. Because to me, their secondary, and I know that there were times, well, Tennessee had the lead or this or that. You can't blame it on a lack of pressure from the defensive line because they ranked among the leaders in the SEC in sacks. They ranked among the leaders in tackles for loss. They ranked among the leaders in quarterback hurries. So it wasn't that the quarterback had all day to throw the football. The secondary just wasn't very good. So if they can get some quality play out of Gibson and have a couple of these transfer, just be decent. They don't have to be great. Just be decent. I think the secondary could be much better. So I think Gibson could be a very important part of that secondary.
Jimmy, great stuff. As always, we appreciate you. You can follow Jimmy Hyams on Twitter at Jimmy Hyams. And you've got all kinds of good stuff going on now with Paige. If people want to check that out, I'm not going to try to pronounce her last name.
No.
Okay, good deal. So tell me about that project that you've got going on.
Yeah, we've been interviewing. My part of it mainly is the rewind. We've interviewed Roy Kramer, Sterling Hinton, Charles Davis, Heath Shuler. We're going to launch Heath Shuler next week. We're also doing some podcasts from the College World Series as Paige is in Omaha. So we've got a lot of content that's going up. And I will put a link out on my Twitter account to all the content that we have. And then you can go to Full Disclosure Pro on YouTube to find the interviews that we have loaded.
Jimmy, have a blessed day. I appreciate you more than you know. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Caleb. Y'all take care.
Jimmy's appearance brought to you by Ray Varner Ford. Hang tight. In 2 minutes, we're going to dig into a new Lady Vol transfer. And while I've got concerns about the new Lady Vol coach and more, stay tuned. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports.
5th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Experience it all at Ray Varner Ford in Clinton. Need a quick fix or maintenance? Visit our Quick Lane Tire and Auto Center. Keep your Ford running smoothly with the experts in our service department. Ready for your next Ford? Our sales team is here to guide you to this 24 Ford Escape all-wheel drive, $31,954. 24 Ford Edge all-wheel drive, $37,975. 24 F-250 4x4 Crew Cab, $54,760. Local you trust, experience you can afford. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, who is it?
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Do you see me looking up like at the sky like some sort of crazy person, just know there's a reason for that. I've got this new backup screen where I can put all kinds of interesting information that I can bring to you. But Caleb, I have to be honest with you. Are you a 2-screen guy? I'm struggling a little bit to go to 2-screen.
I used to be 2-screen guy, but it's just not great for my neck, honestly.
No, you're going back and forth like you're a tennis match, back and left and right and left and right.
You know, when I first started doing the show last year, I kid you not, I had a really bad chair and I was sitting awkwardly. This was about 6 months into the summer. And I clearly caused an issue with my neck. And it actually made my left foot numb. And my left foot was numb for like a few months until I got it fixed. And I thought it was some other issue, like, do I have diabetes or something like that? But it was just
you have
my neck.
You want to know what you have?
What?
You have sciatica.
I have what?
Sciatica. It's a
What is
nerve
that?
in your lower back that shoots down in your back and your leg and will only get worse through time. So congratulations, you've officially become old.
Oh, thank you, Dave.
I know. Once you get sciatica, that's one of the stipulations. But being old's good. You're like, I'm mature. I've got all kinds of great compliments on your work from my source at UT that I was talking to about some up-and-coming players. I'm again going to continue to tell you that Jackson Moya is going to be really, really good. I'm going to write something on him a little bit later today, and that'll be on Hooker's Corner. Also, your opportunity to win great prizes, and we will be giving away a fantastic prize at the end of the month that will be an autographed mini helmet, John Henderson. How cool is that? It is right up there behind me. And that's brought to you by our friends at Sports Treasures. We love Sports Treasures. Why? Because they've got a lot of sports treasures. They've got over 5 million sports treasures. That is a lot. And at Sports Treasures, they're local. They're in North Knoxville. You need to follow them on Facebook. Go to Facebook, follow them at Sports Treasures TN. That's Sports Treasures TN. Boy, if Jackson Moya is good, how good can Tennessee's defensive front be? I think you and I think that Tennessee's best position will probably be quarterback. But we're in the minority there because he's so inexperienced, talking about Nico. If it's Moya, is it hands down that Tennessee's defensive line is the best position on the team? Are we having that conversation? I think
there's a case already with or without Moya. Okay, because Tennessee has the best defensive lineman in college football as an edge rusher. They have potentially another elite edge rusher, given all the players they have at that position on the other side. In their interior, I mean, we're talking potential NFL guys in Amari Thomas and Omar Norman Lott and Bryson Neeson. All three could be NFL defensive tackles, and you think Elijah Simmons could be a generational defensive tackle if he flips a switch.
Healthy.
And so, yeah.
He's healthy. He's got to be healthy. I was a little bit incorrect on the front end. I thought he lacked some drive, and I did report that based off one, and now I want to go back on that and correct that. It's just health.
Okay. And so with all that in mind, I mean, I always go back to it because it's the greatest defensive line I ever saw in the history of college football. But I go back to the 2001 Tennessee team with John Henderson and Albert Hainsworth. And that was more defensive tackle heavy. And I'm like, this one could be better because while this one's more edge rusher heavy versus 2001 being tackle heavy, the difference is on this team, the defensive tackles are actually quality. I don't want to throw too much shade on Will Overstreet or Bernard Jackson, Dave, but come on, you and I probably could have been all SEC defensive ends playing next to Henderson and Hainsworth, right?
Yeah, and with Henderson and Hainsworth, let me ask you this question. I love these conversations about X's and O's in football. We could do this all day. Would you rather have the 98 group, Jeff Coleman, Billy Ratliff, those guys that went 2 and even 3 deep sometimes? Or would you rather have Hainsworth and Henderson? Because I would argue I'd rather have 4 good, let's say, give me 5 good defensive tackles instead of 1 elite defensive tackle and a bunch of average dudes. Because I'm rotating them in.
On principle, I agree with you, but 2001 was just different. Hainsworth and Henderson, that's just, I mean, that's so freakishly, like, that combination, that's like Peyton Manning and Jamal Lewis in the same backfield, which Tennessee also had. I mean, that's just so freakish, those two together.
Very freakish. All right. The Lady Vols making some news. They pick up a transfer. done some digging on the Lady Vols and what to expect out of this program. So I want to get to some news, but first, Rappalucci Eberle transfers from Pitt to the Lady Vols. What does this say about the Lady Vols program that's trying to rebuild under Kim Caldwell after two terrible former Lady Vol coaches couldn't get the job done? Is this a big deal? Is this an okay deal?
It's an okay deal, but it stands out. And here's why this stands out. Dave, what was the first question? What was the viral moment from Kim Caldwell's press conference? It was our own John Adams, right?
Yep.
Kim Caldwell at Marshall had the most exciting team to watch. Why? They played up-tempo and they shot a lot of threes. John Adams' question was, can this translate to the SEC? And Caldwell said, I wouldn't be here if I didn't think it could. Now, the question, rooted in that question was this. Kim Caldwell is going to have to get taller players to do in the SEC what she was doing at Marshall. Is that fair to say? She had to get more size. Well, she's gotten the size with her transfers. All of her transfers are Ford or Ford adjacent except Samara Spencer. So she's gone all for size. None of them are good three-point shooters. And this is her fifth pickup, Rappalucci Eberle. And she doesn't even shoot the three. She's a 6'1" forward who has never attempted a three-point shot in her Division I college basketball career. I don't know if she did in junior college, but never did last year. Kim Caldwell, I don't know if maybe she knew she was limited on who she could pick up this year. So what has she done? She has sacrificed the three-point shooting to go for the tempo and athleticism she wants to run. Dave, I think this team is going to look like you're going to laugh. You remember the old Mark Godfrey teams at Alabama that were so out of control athletic, but had like no finesse to their game whatsoever?
Yes.
Damari Carroll and those guys. Yeah. That's what this team might end up looking like this year.
Well, my concern is I think there are thousands of great football players that come out of high school because football is so pervasive. And so I think you can build from smaller schools in the transfer portal. I don't know that you can do that in women's basketball. I don't know that smaller schools produce the amount of prospects needed. I feel like Tennessee's taking a football solution and applying it to women's basketball. Listen, hate to tell you, Coach, you're going to have to go beat Staley, Ariema, Mulkey, those people for the top prospects in the nation coming out of high school because they ain't hard to point out. There just aren't as many of them, Caleb. It's a numbers game. And if you go out and you get two elite players from high school and your answer is getting 4 or 5 smaller perimeter players who, as you said, can't shoot, that's not a good answer.
Yeah, this is very unique. I think Vic Schaefer is the only other coach who I know is like this. He's now at Texas. He was at Mississippi State. Maybe Jeff Walls at Louisville, but I don't know a coach that has X's and O's his or her way to a long-term success in women's basketball. They've recruited their way to long-term success. Let's just be honest. Let's call it what it is. They've recruited. I mean, Gino Auriemma had his run at UConn because UConn got every top 5 player possible for a period of time.
Well, yeah, and when they got them, when you got the Shamiqua Holds clause or the Candace Parkers or the Maya Moores, you pretty much just said, how many national championships are we going to win? Not, are you? It's how many. And I don't think they're anywhere close to getting to that level. Now, maybe she's thinking, let's just get through a season or two till I can build myself up with an exciting brand and go get a Caitlin Clark. But there are even fewer Caitlin Clarks than there are good mid-college, mid-level college basketball players in the women's game. By the way,
and also you can't even get just like a Caitlin Clark. I mean, what happened in the national title game when Caitlin Clark went and faced South Carolina? Caitlin Clark, as good as she was, Iowa had no interior game whatsoever. So South Carolina just wrecked Iowa because of that. You have to have a generational talent in the post and elite talent around the perimeter. And you just have to be better than everybody else right now.
Portions of the program brought to you by Dawn Self. Customer service still matters. When you make that claim, you want to know that it's taken care of. Dawn will do that. And you can click right down below, dawnself.net. With a State Farm agent, with Dawn Self, it's going to be taken care of. And Dawn's fantastic at the greater Chattanooga area. Go to dawnself.net. Everybody's trying to save on price, and I get that. But the simple fact is, when you make that claim, you want it taken care of, and they will do that. Dawn Self, again, right down below, dawnself.net. And I can't help but wonder, too, for any coach, and I'm not calling out Kim Caldwell, but what's it like stepping onto that campus and seeing that statue of Pat Summitt and that arena that you've watched on TV because you've been a huge women's basketball fan for so long? Caleb, I wonder if there's a transition period where she might make some mistakes that she would absolutely love to have back here in a couple of years.
I think it's actually a benefit. I don't think Kim Caldwell feels the pressure that Kelly Harper or Holly Warlick felt to live up to that. And also, I think Danny White helped on that. I think Danny White hired Kim Caldwell and basically said, don't even think about what Pat Summitt was doing here. Don't even try to live up to that. I think Danny White went so out of, we don't want to uphold this tradition because I don't mean uphold it. We don't want to try to live by this because trying to live by this is what's cost us. I think that's Danny White's mindset. Holly Warlick and Kelly Harper, I think both of them, with all due, and by the way, we have a lot of respect for both of them as coaches and as people. They were Lady Vols. Kelly Harper won 3 national titles playing for them. Holly Warlick was Pat Summitt's right-hand woman the whole time.
They were just bad coaches at this hobble level.
Well, yes, and part of that was they felt the shadow of Pat Summitt. They felt it. They coached as if Pat Summitt was watching them the whole time because they were so tied to her. Kim Caldwell doesn't have that problem. Kim Caldwell does not have to worry about that at all. She's probably never met Pat Summitt. Pat Summitt probably never knew who she was. And Kim Caldwell doesn't have to worry about, is the shadow of Pat Summitt watching me? If I'm Danny White, here's what I do. I tell Kim Caldwell, go do some speaking gigs, things like that. Don't listen for a second to the Lady Vol fan base. I would never let them infiltrate Kim Caldwell's mind. Because the minute that contingency does, they will ruin you with the pressure they put on you to try to be like Pat Summitt.
I disagree because I think this Lady Vol fan base has matured. I think they've realized that this is not going to be a Pat Summitt type of program. And if they haven't, then they're incredibly short-sighted, Caleb.
There's 2 Lady Vol fan bases. There is the Tennessee fan base that's now following baseball that loves to follow the sports that are good. And they have now become a majority of the Lady Vol fan base, which is good. That's why they've moved on from the Pat Summitt legacy. But then there is the Lady Vol contingency, the one that is stuck in the Pat Summitt era that have been following them since Title IX was put into play in the 1970s. The ones who want to make sure we all remember that Joan Cronin was a legendary coach, and all due respect to Joan Cronin. You know the type of people I'm talking about, Dave, right? And
yeah, but a lot of that too. Okay, let's get into that.
A lot of power.
Let's get into that for a second. A lot of that is Tennessee's fault. I mean, they didn't treat Pat Summitt with respect during the 80s and early 90s, and they didn't care what happened with women's basketball. So there was a bit of a dissension among some for the other sports. If the Lady Vol fan said, I'll just be a Lady Vol fan, I'm not going to be a Tennessee fan. That to me is goofy as all get out. But yeah, I mean, there's some of that, but that's the guy's fault.
Yeah, but Tennessee was probably better with it than 90% of the other college athletic programs at the time. I mean, I'll say that much. I mean, most of them didn't even want to field a women's basketball team and were forced to. Tennessee embraced Title IX when it happened in the 70s. Now, I'll give you this, and this is the most underrated thing. As I come back to it, this is probably why Bruce Pearl is so underrated as a head coach. Do you remember when he took over at Tennessee, how he would actively cheerlead the Lady Vols too at the same time? Yes. And really tried to unify that fan base of men's and women's basketball Vols fans?
Right.
And
I wish Rick Barnes would do that, but in all honesty, at his age, Bruce was probably 40-ish, 38-ish.
Mid-40s. Bruce was mid-40s.
Okay. Well, I wouldn't expect Barnes to do that at his age, but it would be nice if somebody did. Maybe that's Danny White's job now.
Well, that's what I mean. Barnes is a ball coach, but it's now at the level where I think fans are willing to do it. But you're right, there was a separation. And you're right, Tennessee does deserve a lot of blame for this. But this is partially just being a victim of your own success. Look, it's I've said it's like the aura of Pat Summitt. It's as much of a curse as the Notre Dame job is, where Notre Dame has very much win with honor in football. I actually think it may be worse because with the Lady Vols, there is this shadow of how are you going to live up to what Pat Summitt wanted to do? The whole WWJD, what would Jesus do bracelets? The old school Lady Vol fan base wants you to wear like bracelets, like what would Pat Summitt do in this situation? And they want the coaches to think about that. You shouldn't think about that at all. And I think Kim Caldwell is the best coach to not think about that. I think the way she's assembling her roster this year is exactly what you said. She's assembling what she can to run her system to be effective. And she's hoping that if it's effective in 1 year, that will allow her then, with the Lady Vol resources, to start landing big-time recruits going forward.
All right. Change it up to a little baseball. Basketball? I don't know what basketball is. Just like throwing a fish at
Remember basketball?
I do remember basketball, which a little bit underrated, actually. All right, new poll question on the YouTube page. Vols win today by 0-2, 3-5, 6-8, more than 9. Your thoughts, and hit me up on the message board because this will be dated in a couple of hours. So this is our opportunity to really interact with you. And what are your keys and your thoughts on Tennessee today as they will play Florida State? I think this is it is a huge, monstrous game. Tennessee, Florida State. I don't know that they're a rival necessarily, but it's neat how they've been able to play in these two games. Played in the national championship game, and Caleb, Tennessee baseball has definitely taken center stage recently, which we never thought it would do.
Yeah, it's been very exciting to watch. So let's go ahead and set this up. Is Tennessee baseball better off if they lose a game in the College World Series?
Okay. No. Where are you going with that?
I think Tennessee baseball is better off if they lose a game in the College World Series.
That makes no sense.
I'm going to play this game. Tennessee lost the first game of the SEC tournament, and then they went to go win the SEC tournament. I think losing a game does two things. It keeps you from a long layoff so you're not out of rhythm. And it also helps you refocus when you're putting added pressure on yourself. And I think losing a game can absolutely help. And I'm going to give you two examples. I'll give you one. Do you remember the 2004 World Series when the Red Sox broke the curse of the Bambino?
Yeah, I'm aware of this. Yes.
They
trying to figure out where.
Remember you know this. You're a Yankee fan. They fell behind 3-0 to the Yankees, right? And then they came back and won 4-3.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up.
Then they went and swept the Cardinals in the World Series. Why? The Cardinals were easily the best team in baseball of the year, the most dominant team. They coasted to the World Series, and then they had this really long layoff to wait for the Red Sox to finish their hard-fought series with the Yankees. The Red Sox finish up that series. They're in such a rhythm that the Red Sox just sweep the Cardinals in the World Series. There was no way that was going to change. I think it's the same with Tennessee baseball. And
Travis nailed it. Sleep deprivation has finally gotten to Calhoun.
Or this is just a crazy Caleb, not conspiracy, but take. Because, all right, some people are going to come at me and they're going to say, if you do this, you end up facing another ace that you don't want to face while you have to worry about who's pitching each game. You have to worry about who's pitching each game. Here's my other point that I want to bring up in this segment. Guys, stop treating college baseball like Major League Baseball. Who is pitching is not nearly as relevant in college baseball as Major League Baseball.
Now, when we were at our 3:45 a.m. production meeting, I will give you that. I thought he brought up a good point. We talk a lot about Florida State's ace tomorrow, and Arnold could pitch if somehow Florida State is able to win today. And Caleb, that obviously would be an issue. But as far as Tennessee winning the rest of the tournament, I think they would want to do that. I'm going to go with Travis on that. I don't think losing is a good thing.
All right, let me just bring up a number for you guys real quick. Tennessee has scored 12 entering Wednesday. Tennessee has had faced the aces of all of the other 4 teams that were still in the College World Series when Wednesday began. They faced all 4 of them. They scored 12 runs in 17 innings against them. They have lit them up. Okay, they lit up Florida State's ace. They lit up Texas A&M's, Florida's ace earlier in the season. They have been lighting up aces because their lineup is so elite. It doesn't really matter. It's not postseason baseball in the majors. Where in the majors, as you know, Dave, the game really tightens in the major leagues. It gets really tight.
Didn't you think, though, that Elias says they got a wake-up call in game 1? They needed a 9th inning comeback, needed to score 4 runs. Didn't you think they got that wake-up call? Are you suggesting they need a wake-up call?
I'm suggesting they could use another wake-up call and stay in rhythm a little bit. Now, you're right. The way that 9th inning happened probably does help them a little bit going forward because that was a wild game. Now, let me steal man y'all's point real quick. I think the culture of college baseball in Knoxville and the culture of Tennessee chokes permeates the fans, permeates the players. I do believe that. So maybe you don't want them stuck in an elimination game and losing. I get that. But I also think that sometimes losing helps you refocus. And I think that it's that way in any sport. Dave, I'm just going to be honest with you. If the Patriots had lost to the Giants the final game of the regular season in 2007, don't you think they would have beaten them in the Super Bowl then?
Perhaps. I thought the Giants had a really good push rush in the middle to negate their short passing game. Thought their defensive line was special. Well, I'm gonna. That's not the reason I think the Giants won that game. Let's put it that way.
But the Patriots dropped 38 points on them in the final week of the regular season, and then went and dropped 14 in the Super Bowl. Now, yes, the Giants had a good.
You just can't beat playoff Eli. You know that.
Oh yes, remember in the 2000. The 2 luckiest runs in the history of the NFL, honestly, are those 2. But yeah, I just think that losing a game a lot of times can help you refocus. I think you see it in college football all the time. When you're in now you don't want to lose in college football, or it used to be this way. You could be knocked out of the national title race. But if you do lose and you get that second chance, you don't blow it usually. You usually come through. Alabama getting that second chance with LSU in the Sugar Bowl in 2011. Alabama absolutely beat the brakes off LSU in that game.
Travis, I'm with you. He said, wake up call. They're playing like the 52 Yankees right now. I agree with you. Caleb made his argument. And I'm not saying that Tennessee can't win the College World Series if they lose a game, but I think they're a heck of a lot more likely to do so if they don't.
I mean, I guess if you just based on numbers, that's the case because you lose one, then you lose another one, you're out.
But let me ask you this. I mean, how much of a difference is it? I mean, in your mind, significant, a little bit if they lose, if they were to lose a game?
No, I don't think it's that significant. I think they can afford to lose a game. I know y'all could call me crazy. I know it's crazy, but I think sometimes losing a game does help you. I think it in a double elimination tournament where you still control your own destiny. I think losing does help you. And you know what? Travis brought up the 52 Yankees. It took the 52 Yankees 7 games to beat the Brooklyn Dodgers that year. So you just brought up a team that lost 3 times in the postseason and managed to win it. So I'm just saying, just pointing that out.
Our friends, the Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards. There's all kinds of stuff out there that could do harm to your body. Make sure you go to the Hemp House. I use the promo code HOOK. That's HOOK for 10% off. It's Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com, Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com, and use that promo code HOOKed, and you'll be well taken care of. Travis, I'm with you. Caleb, you don't want to lose a game, but I do love you.
But also,
yes,
I just want to add, not only did the 52 Yankees lose 3 games to the Dodgers in the World Series that year, they were down 3-2, having to go back to Ebbets Field in Brooklyn to play. Now, you guys can be like, oh, it's Brooklyn. It's still New York. It's like it was a road game. No, back then, Brooklyn was a totally different place from Manhattan or the Bronx. If anybody knew how New York was set up back then, you were going to a foreign country going over to Brooklyn in the 1950s. So that was a road game for the Yankees.
I feel like your take's from a foreign country on the loss. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.